Well, we had 109, and that's one of the last ones going out. We only have 5 more, and then this season is done. I think you know you're old when you remember these Commodore 64s and the like. This one here, it actually runs. I need to get a monitor for it. And should run. Won't start. I'm a little surprised because usually when I drop a little fuel down the spark plug hole, when it's got that kind of compression, it'll fire. And the spark plug is sparking. Now I think maybe I'll just start with something simple. See if I can find a different spark plug. Oh yeah, much better. Typical of a saw that's seen water. Yep, that's all it needed. Runs now. Leaned it out quite a bit too, so it'll probably run better for the fella. He's probably not used to having it run that well, be my guess, because it was pretty fat. All right. Husky 51, 1 down, 3 to go. Well, kind of going through this saw again. It's getting a new piston, new top end. Notice it's a single ring. And like always, I put a little oil in the bearings before I stick them together. This is one that had gone lean and stuck. So you always looking to see why, a saw might fail. And I'm not sure whether or not the camera is going to show it, but that's the hole for pulse. That little white stuff in there. Let's see if we can unplug that hole. My hunch is if that was like that, that carburetor couldn't pulse very well at all. Might be one of the reasons why it went lean. Not sure I have something that can. That thing's completely plugged. Completely plugged. You know what it looks like? It looks as if somebody had put this together with a sealer type material. And the sealer material actually got into the pulse hole. I mean, that is like more than plugged. And this is absolutely glued on. So this is a case where somebody used, a sealing type material, and it caused a saw failure, because that right there is plugged beyond belief. There's no way that that was pulsing. Let me see if I can poke it from the inside out. Unbelievable. And that is absolutely plugged. So I set this down on the table and kind of tapped it to see if something would come out. And this little, like, pebble thing came off. See it? So I took a flat file. I always use Nicholson files. And what I found is they're more likely to be actually flat and straight. So I took this file and I flattened out that surface because I was having a hard time peeling off the gasket. It was glued on. And I'm wondering if that little piece I popped out of there was just simply somebody's glue. But this is what it's supposed to look like. Because the pulse on the 288, there's a little hole right here that goes down to the case, and that intersects this hole right here, right? And then of course you have the gasket And that has to also allow that hole, right, to have through passage. And then of course the manifold here that goes to the carburetor. But usually when you find something that dramatic, that usually is the answer as to why things were not working. And I would say it's a really, really good chance that was the issue for this particular saw. I'm in here. Let's see if I've got a new gasket for the carburetor. Well, it's a beautiful day in the shop. Beautiful day outside too. Getting a chance to sort of re-engage after a couple left turns in life. And one of the first saws I want to complete is this 288 that's been sitting around here for a while. I've needed to get this done for a while. And the early prognosis when it came in was it probably needed seals bottom end because it was running so lean. And when I was doing my diagnosis, I found that the pulse line, or the hole in the manifold for pulsing the carburetor, was just totally and completely plugged. I mean, I've never seen anything like that before. So it was kind of a bit of a surprise to me as well when I found it. So this one here got most of a carb kit. I left this top because it looked like it was fine, just needs to get wet. A completely new top end. About an hour's worth of cleaning, and that's something I want to mention. One of my pet peeves is when I get a really dirty saw in. And do you charge a person for cleaning? I think from this point on I will. If I get a dirty saw and I got to spend an hour to clean it, you're going to get a $40 charge just to clean the damn thing. I mean, if it's just normal, I don't care. But when they're so caked that I can't work on them, as this saw was, I find that annoying. It's unnecessary, you know. So I don't know if we can do it, but I'd like to see if this will start. And I see gas pouring out somewhere. Oh. Looks like a cap. I wonder if I put a newer cap on it, it would stop coming out. It's certainly not a good idea to have it coming out like that. And I've got a space heater back there running, right? How to burn down your shop. Well, yeah. One of the beauties of the new style caps is they pretty much seal all over the place as compared to the old style that just have that O-ring. That O-ring is pretty, it's not going to seal. So I'm going to put one of those in there. But I like working on these 200 series saws. I've said that a bunch of times. And it's just because they're so simple. See if it's got enough draw to pull from the tank. Okay. What we have here is a stereo. It's actually pretty common. Notice it started on like the third pull. And that tells you the fuel line, the fuel filter, and the carburetor, and all that's working good. But running rich like that, what that's telling you is the guy before me, working on this saw, was trying to figure out how to get around the lean condition. He started adjusting on these adjustment screws right here for mixture, and wound them way out. What a surprise. So let's go back to a normal start point. Okay, that's a good starting point. Now what I do, I always hear these people trying to say, how do you adjust these darn things? Well, I don't worry about the high speed at first. You know, that's the whole concept of a reference RPM. I don't know if people get that, but basically when you use this tack and you do a quick full throttle for just enough for the tack to get the reading, you don't want to sit there and hold it wide open. That's not a good idea. But when you use the tack and you get it to full RPMs for just a couple of seconds, you tune to a number, and that's a reference number. And the idea is that if you get to that number, you'll probably have a mixture that's okay for the operation of the saw. Now, what gets kind of confusing is when people say, oh, I got a 14,000 RPM saw, this, that, and the other thing. And as if being able to tune it to a higher number makes it a faster saw. The two are not connected. It's simply a reference. And what the manufacturers have come up with is, for most of the shops, that reference RPM, or it's a little conservative. You've got a reasonable carb setting for the range of temperatures and the range of RPMs that saw is going to run and experience. So it doesn't come back to your shop blown up. Now the guys who will tweak and tune to a finer state of tune, oftentimes you'll go from the reference RPM and then you start checking the plug and looking at the color on the plug to get that nice tan, and that tells you you've got a nice mixture at your operating RPMs and your operating load. The reference RPM again is just simply a tool so that you can get the carburetor at the high speed mostly correct. It's not perfect, but mostly correct for the most situations. Now, what I do is I don't worry about that until I get the low speed to work. What I try to do is I try to get it to where it'll idle, say 26 or 2700 RPMs, with as little opening or idle screw as possible. I want that throttle plate to be almost closed if I can do it, and then adjust the low speed air right there in order to get to that 2700 RPMs. Theory being, if the saw is basically correct, basically in good shape, and the design is a well-designed saw, and it has a well-designed saw like these are, cylinder porting, along with the carburetor size, along with the jetting, you really don't need a whole lot of this idle here at all. When that throttle is shut, there's some cutouts in the throttle plate, along with the proper tuning with the air screw for low speed, which is the one always closest to the cylinder. You should get it to idle and restart quickly. You know what I'm saying? And again, the references, you'll start with, say, I always start with one turn out on each one of the screws, and I work from there. If you're nervous about your saw, or you've done some modifications where it might breathe better, then start like with 1 1/4 turnout. You know what I'm saying? But just somewhere around 1 turnout. And if it's between 3/4 turn and 1 1/4, you know, if it sits in that range to get the idle, that's what I'm looking for. That's good. You know, that means there's nothing radically off with the saw. If I've got to have it idle at, say, 2 turns out, well, I'm going to start looking for air leaks. You know what I'm saying? So let me get this thing, I don't want it to run without the cooling for too long. I'm actually making this go through a couple of heat cycles, and that's part of the break-in process. I'm not a crazy break-it-in formal type guy, but you know, you do have to use a little bit of common sense. A new saw in anyway.